What's up, everybody? Nick Piles, publisher of 1851franchise.com, here with another episode of Meet the Zor. Today we are talking Homefront Brands, coming up next. Actually, first Jeff's story, then Homefront Brands. So Jeff, how did you accidentally fall into franchising? Now I know your backstory, but I think it's a good start to where our discussion is going to go. What's your franchise accident story?
Well, yeah, we all have it, Nick, and thanks for having me on. So I really fell into franchising after being a college athlete at Appalachian State University and starting a painting business. Hurricane hit South Florida in 1992, and one of my previous employees called me and said, "Hey, Jeff, we've got this huge hurricane down here. We need all the help we can. I know you guys are running a business up there in beautiful Boone, North Carolina. Can you come down and help us?" So my business partner and I went down there. We cut our teeth in the insurance restoration and disaster response business in 1992 and 93. I recognized that many of the responders were franchise companies. You had the Serve Pros, the Service Masters, all of these people, the Paul Davis Systems. First General Services was a dealership model at the time. That was the one that I got affiliated with for a little bit as an employee. And then three business partners and myself moved up to Central Florida in 94, started a business that would turn into Advaniclean that I would sell some 24 years and 11 months later with 240 locations in 37 states. And I moved back up to North Carolina in 1995 to get married and to start our second location. We didn't franchise until the mid-2000s after I bought my last partner out. And really brought in some consultants. I committed to really the franchise model at that point in time. And we sold our company stores in 2006, 7, and 8 in Orlando, Greenville, Spartanburg, South Carolina, Columbia, South Carolina, and Charlotte, North Carolina under the franchise model to kind of make sure we understood what franchising was and to build our franchise chops. And then we launched to the market in 2009, and I sold the business 10 years later in 2019.
When you think back on that, I mean, obviously it was a journey, and obviously the end of the story is fantastic. You exited a business and you've continued on in franchising, but how hard was it?
Well, I got to tell you, if I never realized that it would take, everything takes twice as long, is twice as hard, and is twice as expensive as you think it is. One of the things that I would say is that I didn't get franchise experienced people around the business early enough. We actually went and downloaded the FTC rule, and we wrote our own FDD. I mean, we were so silly about being trying to do things our way. I know that I could have gone a lot quicker and maybe gone a lot bigger if I had some people around me, some of these great people in the industry a little bit earlier. But yeah, it was really difficult. And actually, to franchise the business, we needed to burn the boats, and that's why I like our business. We were working in Hawaii, Canada. We were working in the Caribbean. We were chasing all these storms. Our businesses were growing locally. And, lack of focus always leads to a lack of greatness. And there was no focus on this franchise program that I was dreaming about, but we just kept doing more business. So I said, the only way that I'm ever going to be able to commit to franchising is if I sell our existing businesses under the franchise model. So I took a perfectly good, large, tens of millions of dollars a year business, and I kind of threw it away in favor of a potential future in franchising.
A few comments that I want to go through because I think your opinion will frame these nicely. So first thing is, I hear in your story a lot of bootstrapping, and I think one of the biggest misses in franchising, it's very hard to solve for, but when you become a franchise, because the fees get so large, you eliminate the opportunity for bootstrapping. I think about starting my company. I did so with $10,000 in the bank, and I'm sure yours is a very similar story. And so you think about the greatest success stories in business, or the ones that build wealth for their families, it tends to start from this bootstrapping moment. In franchising, there's this hurdle at the front end because we have these giant fees that now eliminates out all the grit and hustle. How have you navigated that? And is there a way to solve for still discovering grit and hustle when the fees are so high today?
Now, what when you say fees, are you talking about fees to franchisees or fees?
Franchise fees. So call it somewhere between low end 25, high end 100.
Yeah. Uh, Look, if it's all about time, right? So let's take it back to the franchisor. Okay, I've watched. It took me literally 24 years from the first time I started thinking about franchising the business to get it to where it was a business that was of scale and saleable. Many founders of franchise companies do it over many years or a decade, and you just kind of grit and you hustle and you work with your early franchisees and you love them and you keep your arms around and you keep them close. Um, but you're really not going to be royalty self-sufficient until you get 40 to 60 owners out there operating, depending on what kind of model it is. I'm talking mainly to the service brand, and you're not going to be normally profitable till you get 80 to 100. Normally, I'm meaning something that would conform to something private equity might want to buy. So, like, how do you get from there all the way to that? Because you have to invest ahead of revenue to build the systems for the franchise owners. So it's really expensive to build franchise companies, and I think a lot of people get into it with the vision of doing it, and they don't realize how expensive it's going to be. So there's that challenge there, making sure that you're properly resourced to actually and have the courage to actually invest ahead of revenue to help your franchisees be successful. That's one thing that's easier after you've had an exit than it was before.
Right.
That's one reason we've been able to go so fast. I mean, we're literally in under 2 years, we're over 200 franchise owners, 600 territories operating across Homefront Brands, and doing about 10 deals a month still. So from the franchisee perspective, if you think about it, like, yeah, you can start from your bedroom with nothing, but you don't have websites, you don't have a tech stack. You may or may not know customer acquisition marketing. Customer acquisition is very dynamic today. We have to talk with our franchise owners about being very malleable and being very flexible, because it used to be you put a tech stack in place and this will last you for 10 years. Well, now the next AI tool comes out, kids are getting in front of you and intercepting your leads. You have to evolve very quickly with the technology today, especially in customer acquisition throughout the entire journey, even including appointment setting and things like that. So you can join a franchise as a business owner, and you'd start day one with all of those things. And our philosophy, one of our core tenets in franchising, is that we centralize everything that could be centralized. So we're a big call center company. There's no reason that 200 owners need 2 people in their office answering the phone when we can answer for the entire network, book appointments, do it better, provide all the metrics, kick off the data chain with 20 people, and charge a very nominal fee to the franchise owners for their multi-tenant use of that call center. So, creating simplicity as much as possible for the franchise owners by not making them have to learn how to do Facebook, business manager, and how to place Google ads, and how to, train call center people, really taking the complexity out of it as much as possible, so that franchise owners day one in their marketplace, they are there to build a team, introduce themselves to the community, sell, fulfill, and collect money. And those are the things that they need to do. And, so everything at Homefront Brands is about helping franchise owners start well so that they go well. We've moved all of our business development startup activities before training. So we have franchise owners in training that are actually booking jobs or have already sold jobs before they even came to training, because of the things that we do remotely to help them estimate, close, do some preliminary sales and market development activity. Because I have found, I don't know about you, Nick, but if something doesn't start well, it rarely goes well. So if we can get our franchise owners, speed to revenue quickly, and get their revenue going on, then they have a much better chance of hitting the numbers that they want to hit in their first year.
I'm working on a persona project right now of understanding the psyche of a franchisee for a particular franchisor. And right before I got on with you, I was talking to a franchisee, and I will say it was not a great conversation. The validation was actually a lot poorer than I expected. what's interesting was I started breaking down, like, why are we in a bad place? One, it just didn't get out of the gates the right way. And so the franchisee was already in a bad mood to start this relationship. It's a higher end investment. But what I wrote down, it's on my sheet of paper right here. I said, we got to figure out the intersection of business and corporate America, because what she said is, I left corporate America and I had all this infrastructure and structure around me. And then I went into business ownership. She's like, I don't know how to do all these things. And I'm looking at my franchisor to give me help. And they're like, they give some low-level business consultant that's going to come in there and say, well, try this, or this is what you're doing wrong. And so it's interesting because everything you just said is infrastructure that eventually is going to create larger exits for the brands that you have underneath you. Like, you're building businesses to exit. Everybody should be building business exit. Life's going to exit you, or you're going to exit your business. No matter what, everybody leaves their business. So I'm sure it's interesting if you backcast to Jeff 30 years ago and say, hey man, go put all this structure in place. You've been like, that sounds really expensive, but today you understand the potential impact for franchisees and for you as the franchisor.
Yeah, we're definitely too stupid to fail here. Like, we're building a deep foundation. Like, it depends on what you're building though. So like, and it depends on what your strategy is. So at Homefront Brands, like, a 4-inch slab for a single brand, that might be good enough, but I mean, we're putting deep foundation in, deep infrastructure. We're a Microsoft shop. We have every point of data across all 6 of our brands ends up in the same data lake. So we get a business machine learning and, business intelligence crawling that data lake. So, and that's things that typically only your billion-dollar companies ultimately achieve after decades and decades in business. We put all that in place up front. But it was specific, and it was for a specific target, because we aspire to have a smaller number of large franchisees. So even the brands that we selected have very large average unit volumes. We understand who the customer is. They've got to have a certain margin profile. There's some great little businesses out there that can do $200,000 or $300,000 a year. You can ride around in the car, fix upholstery, that kind of stuff. But our owners aren't going to be interested in that business. So by virtue of that, where I probably only had maybe 3 people or 4 people in Advanaclean that I would have considered to be wealthy, we have a large cohort of family office people, private equity type people that have multiple large businesses, and they're looking to diversify and expand their portfolio with businesses. But the businesses that they want to invest in, they're fine investing in a franchise business so long as they perceive that it can scale to be worth their time. Because to your point, with exits, private equity has gone all the way through the brands and into the boxes. I mean, they will, if you can build a $10 million service company, they'll find 3 or 4 of those $10 million operators, put them together, and put a nice check on those owners. And they might have built that off of a $50,000 franchise fee to get started in the beginning. So there's definitely an opportunity. And think about this too. Like, right now, houses are very expensive. It's kind of criminal that, kids can't buy a starter home for less than $400,000 in many markets. How, we made our money. I mean, I built my first 3 houses under $100,000. I made great money on those houses. They were, starting, cash is king, but equity is the kingdom. So you build equity through that. Well, the housing market's high right now. Stock market's high. It's a little volatile. We're in election year. That's going to happen. But more and more people are recognizing that businesses are a high-class asset. They want to take advantage of the tax code. They want to take advantage of creating some economic freedom, having, if they're going to work every day, they might as well be creating some equity inside of something. So, and franchising is a great way if you connect with the right group of people to build scalable and saleable assets that are businesses.
I want to say a comment, and you're unfortunately you fall into the bucket, but the opportunity is great. So the end of my statement will be very, very good.
Is it good looking people?
No, you're a good looking guy. So if you
never been accused,
no, that's good. That's really good. If you go back to the day you were before you were in franchising, and I've been thinking a lot about this. Me too. I go back and I would have said McDonald's. If you would have said what's an FDD, I would have said I have no idea. And so, like, I just picked Window Hero for instance. And so in my opinion, part of the reason a buyer stays in the funnel so long, and obviously you've built the funnel so strong that it might take a while to go through it, but you have the strongness of it that it's kicking off 10 deals on a monthly basis. But like, I think about why do people get stuck here, and I've really dialed into this when I'm having conversations with franchisees and say, take me from the moment of impression to the moment of inquiry, not to purchase, just that journey. And right now it's 6.4 months. It's not moving. That's how much time they're going from, ooh, I've learned that you're a franchise, to when you're buying. My next follow-up question has been, well, what's taking you so long? Why won't you fill out that form, knowing that it costs you $0 to have a conversation with a brand that you're considering? And they say, because I don't understand franchising. And so when I land on these franchise sites for years, it's 99% right now. Franchisors aren't saying, well, wait a second, let us educate you on what franchising is before you explore what an opportunity is. And in my opinion, this has been the magic of the broker network, whether they understand it or not, is when they're like, hey, we can coach you through what a franchise is. And now we're going to get heavy fees for that, but they're coaching all the way through because they found the gap, whether they know it or not. And so when I say that, like, this gap of education, because an FDD can be intimidating, buying a franchise, I don't know what I can and can't do. What are the rules behind it? Because of this, do you see that as a potential gap that could close? Because when you're a multi-brand franchisor, like, your resources on education should be greater than that of a broker community too.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's very nuanced. People don't understand what franchising is. They don't understand how pervasive it is. There's over 800,000 franchise establishments. There's about 9 million people in this country that are employed by or with a franchise organization at some level. That's 1 in every 8 people that are employed in the country. Small business is 60%, between 46 and 60% of our GDP. Franchising is a smaller subset of that, but still material inside of that. And I think 99% of people are employed in small business. So think about that. Like it's a massive, massive community. And there's so many things, like the NFL is a franchise. Franchising is a very pervasive business model, and it's not a business. It's a business model. So one of the things that we put in place, which has been extremely effective, is that I do a Monday evening foundations call. It's called Homefront Foundations. If you've been in process for us for 1 day, you get invited to that call. I spend an hour, our president of franchising and myself. First of all, we'll have about 20 people on it usually. The candidates will introduce themselves to one another, but one 10-minute segment in there is, what is franchising? I say, look, you're working with our development directors. You're probably not going to get this, but like, I want to tell you from my perspective, or from our perspective, like, what is franchising? And I give them 10 minutes on just like what it is. It's a multi-tenant, it's a leverage model, it's transitional, it's transformational. There's a community aspect to it. And some stories and anecdotes in there about other people. Jerry Richardson was the founder, the initial investor of the Carolina Panthers. Well, he quit the NFL as Johnny Unitas' tight end, and he bought a Hardee's, and he ended up with 400 Hardee's restaurants. And then he invested in real estate and insurance, and then ultimately the Carolina Panthers, which is another version of a franchise. So it's interesting, because when people first get exposed or they get contacted by somebody representing a franchise, those people are going to have an agenda, and they're going to, they may or may not take the time to educate them more broadly on the whole landscape of franchising. And I think it can be a miss.
Well, I think that what you just said is your idea, because what you're doing is, after I've become a lead, now I'm going to educate you what franchising is. If somehow you could take that story and take it back a step and say, before you ever even talk to us, do not even talk to us, let me educate you what franchising is. In my opinion, that is the gap that nobody has covered, is these ghost candidates that haven't given you their name, that are around the web. Is like, how do we give them that speech that you give on Mondays for 10 minutes on what is franchising, figure out a way to extract that so that it's in the ghost process, not after they become a lead. That's where the magic is, because all these people are out there. There are thousands and thousands of human beings looking at franchise sites right now, right, and not filling out that form. Why? Because I'm intimidated.
Yeah. So interesting. Yeah. They don't know if it's a scam or a business opportunity or what. But
no clue.
yeah,
And neither do we. And you and I are sophisticated human beings. Even back when we were younger, we were still sophisticated human beings, but we didn't understand what franchising was because we didn't have the time to educate, or nobody was educating us. This is the area of opportunity. I did a franchisee podcast a few days ago. It's a franchise owner of Woodhouse Day Spa. I said, talk about your buying process. And she goes, well, my sister worked at a Woodhouse in Indiana. And when we started thinking about a franchise, like we didn't even know Woodhouse was a franchise. And then we were like, oh, you like doing this? I'm like, she was employed by a franchisee, had no idea that it was a franchise. And now you guys are franchisees. She's like, yes. I go, what would have happened had she known that this was a franchise? She's like, we would have done it sooner. So it's interesting because of the lack of information. Okay, so you're obviously doing great things now. Evaniclean, great success story. You're parlaying that into you're franchising your franchise. The widget ends up being irrelevant. You have the systems and processes down. Give me a sense, in case there's a candidate watching, what's the vision for Homefront Brands as we head forward?
Yeah, when I recruited our management team, I said, look, I'm looking for 10-year commitments. I'm willing to make it worth your while. I've been very generous with participation in these companies. I've kind of made my money, and I wanted to give people an opportunity to maybe build companies for other people to be able to come in and make their lick on things if they would build a company. I knew that we could get great brands. I knew that we could do the technology, the call center. I knew we could do all those things, but we needed great presidents, great VPs, great directors, great executives. So we went out and got those great people. And I said, look, we're building a 100-year company. I'm asking you for 10 years commitment to be able to build this 100-year company. We have a 2037 BHAG of about $5 billion of system-wide sales. We want to give 1 million books to children. We're partnered with Ben and Kenny Carson and Carson Scholars. We're building reading rooms around the country. We have a great passion for really 3 things. Children, they are our future. Number 2, veterans. So we're partnered with Operation Homefront, and we have a financial goal that we want to hit as well there. And then, creating economic freedom and financial security for families on Main Street USA, because especially look at this country the last 3 or 4 years, man. Like when you lose your middle class and the money leaves Main Street and it leaves families, like you got Venezuela, right? So, we're very interested in expanding the reach and relevance of the franchise sector and doing so responsibly so that families can have an opportunity to build something for themselves on Main Street USA. And I need something like that. I was 50 when I sold my company. I needed a real compelling reason to come back and to put the money into this and to sign up for it. Because once you sign up, it's like football, man. Once you step across the line and you are in the game, you cannot recontract. You have to jump on the ball. You got to tackle. You got to hit. You got to run. So it's not like I'm gonna put my toe in this. Like you're all the way in because you're in life with these franchise owners. You're responsible for these people. They are giving you a lot of money, and you are responsible. Regardless of whether they agree or disagree with the decision, you are responsible to stand up in front of them and account for your actions and do what's in the best interest of the franchisee. One thing I like about the executive team we've put together is we all have the same philosophy that the franchise owners are at the center of every decision we make. Even when we have our offsite, we put a plate there representing the franchisee, and that the only thing that matters to us is what happens inside the 4 walls of their business.
Here's what I love about your vision. I don't need to blow smoke, so I'm just going to come out of here and say this. I said, tell me the vision of Homefront. And it wasn't like we want to sell a billion units. It wasn't even anything specific about the brands. You talked about how are we going to give back to our children, how are we going to give back to our veterans, and how are we going to give back to our franchisees. I think that's a good North Star. And I would imagine, again, backcasting, those are philosophies that as life has gone on, you've developed and maybe didn't have in the beginning stages, but now you have your North Star, and that's dictated by all of the life experiences that led you up to this point.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Because that at the end of the day, that's what success is. That, if you can accomplish those things, then you're going to be fine. If you lose your focus on the things that really matter, along the way. It causes you to make bad decisions. It causes you to get wobbly knees about making an investment when an investment needs to get made. It's like like I said, like you asked me earlier, and I saw you chuckled at it, but like you have to be too stupid to fail. Like you've got to be stupidly committed to the things that you know are right, and the things that are the philosophies, whatever it is that you decide, man, you've got to be all in.
Well, the unfortunate side of what you said is you've given a blueprint. The unfortunate side is in the world of franchisors, there are plenty consultants who don't look at the viability of the business infrastructure or the business period and say, yes, we can franchise your business. And you put another franchisor out there that's going to compete to try to convince people to put their life savings into it.
Yeah.
And the reality is that franchise buyer may love Bob's Burgers and said, ooh, that burger is great. But they don't understand how to look at the margins and understand that they're not going to be able to pay back their initial investment, and don't understand that eventually they're going to shut down their doors, versus looking at an infrastructure, similar fees, similar structure, but a lot more out of someone like you. And the unfortunate thing is there's nothing out there that's saying this is how you vet this franchise versus this one. And that's a challenge. And obviously you're taking the right steps. And if a buyer can find their way to you, then they're going to find something that is much different than exists in the marketplace. And you're scaling it based on taking multiple resources and cross-applying it over multiple brands. But it's something that, again, going back to a novice franchise buyer that doesn't understand how franchising works, they might not even understand the cost analysis and the benefits of joining Homefront versus Bob's Burgers, just simply because they don't understand what franchising is. And we can close that, then the educated buyer might change. And it's not going to just be family offices that are like, okay, I see what you're doing. That's where we want to plan our money,
Right.
So,
100%.
Well, great stuff. Obviously, I enjoyed talking franchise and enjoyed talking with you. Thanks for doing this, Jeff.
Yeah, Nick, this has been great. An honor to be on. I appreciate you.
Of course. For Jeff, I'm Nick. There's another episode of Meet the Zor.